Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another brand new episode of the Because Cannabis podcast every Wednesday on YouTube, every Thursday on Spotify, and anywhere that you listen to audio podcasts. You know, Dustin, I love saying, my name's BC Wayman, that's Dustin Kava. I love saying, welcome to the Because Cannabis podcast and blah, 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 blah every single week. But sometimes I wonder if we should have just went like maybe a different direction. I was brainstorming some show ideas. Let me know what you think. Maybe we should rebrand the show. Like we're almost 2 years in. It's time for a script flip, a rebrand. Leave your notes in the comments after you subscribe, everyone. Which of these is your favorite? Dustin, first up, Wacky World of Weed.
No.
What do you think? No?
All
right,
I think of a wacky inflatable tube man. You know,
we could have that as our mascot. We could have a ganja guy, like a leaf flower, and it could have big stems.
You know what? I
It
used
could be
to
a big
work.
cannabis bud that just
Fuck
floats
that.
in the air.
I used to work for the shittiest head shop. I'm not going to name names, but this place was a fucking shithole. And they had a goddamn bong for a mascot. And they would make this asshole stand out in front of the store.
Wait, they had a costume?
They had a full-blown water pipe fucking guy who would stand in front of the store every now and then and wave his down stem around like a big fat fucking cock. And it just railed this town. It was like 0.2 miles from the school, so all the school buses would go by in the morning and the big bong would be fucking waving his hand and shaking his down stem. It was fucked up. This place was ridiculous. I'm glad I moved on since then.
I would like a mascot. I think we need a mascot for the show. Maybe that's what's missing. Maybe that's what we need to do to get more listeners, a mascot. How about if we went more serious, like today's weed news? Why do I keep doing weed? Cannabis news today. Ooh, yeah. CNT. Oh, that sounds a lot like, I don't think CNT sounds like something we should know. Cannabis news today. Welcome, everyone. What if we talked in deeper voices and gave news and updates on the cannabis topics on the 10s and the 50s? Why would you do it on the 10s and 50s? That's like 20 minutes apart on the 10s. News on the 10s. That's what I remember growing up. My driving around with my father. It was always news on the 10s. We should do cannabis news on the 10s. Every 10 minutes, we're going to do a 30-second video all day, every day. What do you think about that? Which is a constant. We just do literally like we do Vine, like 6 seconds, but we do it every 10 minutes. And so over the course of 3 days, you get a show. What would you edit this show, Dustin, into 6-second clips? That's my question.
Today on the 10th, Cannabis 10ths. We should call it the 10ths for Ohio 10ths. Today on the 10ths, we're fucking MedMen goes bankrupt. Done.
Hey, everybody. Brainstorming for the show. Thank you for listening. Should we rebrand? What do you guys think? What part about the show do you love? Let us know in the comments below. Dustin and I got a fun show today to talk about. Got some great interviews, some special guests. There's a little click for you coming up soon. You got to stop me from clicking. It's been happening. Listening to past shows, doing my homework, trying to improve our performance for you, the listener, trying to help make this show the best gosh darn cannabis podcast available on the World Wide Web for that. So I don't know. I'm just really proud, Dustin. I want to make it work. Thank you guys for joining us again. We got a great show lined up, got some amazing interviews coming up soon. Be sure to check out the show. You know, on the heels of last week's show, Dustin, if you haven't checked out the probably clickbaity titled Named with a great thumbnail, but really has, I think in retrospect, not much to do with it. Hippie Holiday Hell, The Devil Took Our Lettuce, the greatest name in cannabis podcast history. That doesn't really have anything to do with what the show's about, but it's a great show. You should check it out. I want to continue our theme today, Dustin, talking a little bit about cannabis companies going broke. But of course, we'll get to this in a few minutes, so stay tuned. The big news happening right now in the world of weed. Oh, the world of weed. WOW. Wow. Is that trademarked? Wow. World of weed. Big W, little O, big W, right? And it's like green. Oh, I feel it. We're workshopping and we're going to find something. No, we're not. We're sticking with Because Cannabis. We bought the shirts and everything. We're sticking with the Because Cannabis podcast. So we'll continue with that. We'll talk a little bit of cannabis banking and some of the bills, holiday cannabis bills not being paid. But the big news, the DEA reclassifying, or at least talking about reclassifying, moving towards reclassifying, and then deciding in retrospect, we'll see what happens. We'll talk about that as well. And then a little bit of Ohio news. Dustin, let me pull up this article first. Let me find this article. We were just talking last week on our show, and I know it was, hold on a second. I'll find the article first. Well, while I'm doing this, and we'll get to this in detail, just first reaction, Dustin, when you heard the DEA was reclassifying cannabis to potentially Schedule 3, and we'll dig into that article in a few minutes here. What was your just like thought as soon as you see that headline?
Fuck. I mean, honestly, I just started thinking about cannabis banking. But dude, there's a part of me that is like, uh, I don't know. I don't fucking know. I didn't think anything, to be honest. I just thought it was another day in the life of a cannabis companies. It was nonsense.
It was nonsense. Another day in the life of the cannabis company. We'll dig into the article. It's way more than nonsense. It could be historic, Dustin. It could be nothing, but it could be historic in that regard. So we'll talk about that in a second. Dustin's deep thoughts he clearly has about this issue. I know you have deep thoughts about this issue. We were talking a little bit about this last week. Talking about some of the cannabis companies and being so far behind in their payments. And is this kind of setting the industry up for potential failure? Because there is this system where people are just delivering product and chasing down money and bills aren't being paid, which led to this kind of article. The company that got the South Park treatment, probably one of the biggest brands in cannabis, one of the really big boys who hit the VC world, kind of combined tech and weed together. MedMen, the Apple Store of weed, bro, they're broke. Thought, Dustin.
Yeah, you want to know why?
Why?
Because they suck. Because they fucking
All right. Well,
suck.
you know what? I
The
feel
truth-
like that is.
Here's my thing: is I am so happy when I see this shit because, I mean, I instantly know who to short in the market every time I see these major cannabis brands. And yes, cannabis stocks have gone up with the DEA stuff, but when I see companies spend the amount of money that they do on marketing and endorsements and all sorts of nonsense, especially right out of the gate, I instantly know they're gonna go in the shitter because it means that you are much better at spending money than banking your money, than saving your money or keeping it in the bank account. You just like to blow it like it's your biggest load of the week that you've been edging for 4 days, and all of a sudden, pow, just the entire account gets drained. And I love it. I think it's hilarious. I think these guys are absolutely hilarious. And it's all the big cannabis brands. They sure love to blow their load before they see what's coming in.
Well, if this show wasn't 18 and over before, just because of the cannabis content, it got a little hot in her. Thank you, Dustin, for that. All right, let's read through this article real quick. So the headline, and this is from FS Gate, San Francisco Gate, fsgate.com. California Apple Store of Weed declares bankruptcy with $410 million in debt. California's first cannabis company, valued at over $1 billion with a B, is finally going to see its end. Once called the Apple Store of Weed. They put out a press release that they are declaring bankruptcy. The company has said that it's $410 million in debt in there. So not too long ago, they were, the big boy, the kind of what everyone wanted to aspire to. They got all these write-ups in these multiple different companies. They were listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange in 2018, where they've been trading. We talked about it. They've got the South Park treatment kind of made fun at, but the company, $1.6 billion valuation, allowed some executives. You want to talk about blowing some wads? They bought some luxury cars, right? Because they flew on private jets.
That's my point. Is they honestly do not know how to keep the money in the bank. They say, "Oh, we just hit the stock exchange and at $1 billion, valuation." And I love this. I think initial public offering valuations are always complete shit. 85% of the time, it don't mean nothing. It's you don't know what this company is going to be valued at in 6 years. You're speculating on it. And if I was a guy putting on an IPO, of course I'm going to shoot up those speculation numbers. If I think I'm going to generate, $100 million a year, I love this idea of how far they think they can go. And then at the same point, how much money they think they can blow in the meantime. It's hilarious. You know what they say about CEOs and stuff? You can always tell about a company failing when you look at the CEO's watch. And so if you see a CEO with a $70,000 watch on walking across the stage going, we're going to be the new, Apple of weed, instantly, to fucking short that company. But if you watch that guy walk in and he's got a $40 Timex on, but with $1 billion valuation on this company, that's when I say, you know what? I think this guy's taking his finances a little bit seriously.
What do they say about a 50-year-old receding hairline polo shirt wearer with an Apple Watch?
Definitely do a show with a homeless guy.
Hell yeah. Speaking of homeless, poor decisions made on them. They bought dispensaries. I spend a lot of time in dispensaries in Ohio, and I understand we're not the California or the New York market, which isn't even open yet, by the way. So I understand we're not there, but I spend a lot of time talking to a lot of folks who smoke and consume cannabis and opening locations. While I'm sure it looks good on a marketing campaign in Beverly Hills, in Fifth Avenue in New York City, where there's not even legal weed yet, that is terrible decision making. I know real estate's expensive anywhere in California, but the reality is the superstars don't need weed. They got dudes who bring them weed, right? Weed's super easy to get in California. You can open up a beautiful store, not in Beverly Hills, but somewhere down the road a little bit where it's just a hair cheaper and probably make as much money. Going in debt, by the way, 1,300 people.
It's that perception they love to build. I mean, think about that. It's like getting the billboard at Times Square to push the perception. But again, what I find sexy and what really gets the perception of a brand right is being in the black, at the very least, not in the red, not in debt, is actually having a little money in the bank. And yeah, well, dude, look at that. That's
so the company quickly hit financial problems by 2020. Within a couple of years, already reported to not be paying bills. Its stock hit zero this year. Zero, man. That's not good, bro.
Dude, so
they've been selling off assets for the last 2 years. They've been they've been having a fire sale, pun intended. Our fire is fire. Closing locations in San Francisco, closing locations in Oakland, and such. So yeah, so MedMen, a little bit of financial trouble going on there. So that was I found that to be interesting. You know what though, Dustin? They're not the only one. Yeah. Apparently, if you go big and sexy in cannabis, you don't know how to pay bills. Planet 13, probably the most well-known dispensary on the planet. I think the most biggest touristy, the one when people go to Vegas, it's overpriced, but it's cool and there's like a Borders, a weed, more like a Borders. There's different levels and shit. Headline there, if you're watching on video on YouTube or on Spotify with video, Planet 13 posts a $73.6 million loss. But hey, Florida's about to be legal adult use. Maybe we'll win there.
Oh, yeah, because it's really easy to expand your market share when you're losing money. So think about that, $73 million loss. So what does that come out to? $200,000 a day that they're losing?
I'm going to trust you with that math because you look like you could be I was going to say something really mean. You look like you could be good at math, Dustin.
I mean, what's 5 times 7? 5 times 7 is.
I almost said something really terrible. I'm so mean.
But still, this is what have you ever been?
Yes, it's $200,000 a day.
Have you ever? In Vegas, you have the world's largest cannabis store, which is Planet 13, and you walk into this 60,000 square foot dispensary, and there is 57,000 square feet of empty space. It is 19 little tables with 10 products on each table and all open space. And I dude, from the beginning, it's exactly the type of bullshit that I call against. If I was to watch these guys go public, which they're on the stock exchange, these are the people I want to short. And I mean, like, I just love that. You look at the CEO, you look at what they're doing, and you just have to laugh at the way they think they're spending the money, at the amount of advertising they have to do, the amount of, it's just, I just have to laugh at these fools. I don't know, man. There's something to this. There's something to a market where it
operates in the red. It should be called the red business. That's what I'm learning. I've learned that a lot in the past few years, and we talked to these folks on the show. I'll get your point in a second. Sorry. But I think it's shocking and I'm reminded of it often. Shocking to me how many companies in this industry are currently operating at negative cash flow because of deliveries here and the other people not paying their part, and just everyone's just not paying their part. And so they operate on this business where it's like the tech industry, which had its boon and then had its explosion. In about 10 years from now, we're going to have Jared Leto and other folks starring, Justin Gordon-Levitt, all those actors with J names doing, FX drama series on the downfall of different cannabis companies, right? They had what with the WeWorks and all these other ones that are happening on, the Elizabeth Holmes and the Theranos, all those ones that are happening now. This documentary is about the fail of the tech industry, where they had all these huge valuations and massive promises and deliveries, and then I wish I had a soundboard there. And then, but that feels like in about 10 years from now, we're going to pull back the, we're going to scrape the resin bowl and realize, bro, we really were not good at business.
The truth is all technology, all types of businesses, if you want to talk about, when true growth happens within an industry, it usually happens after a bust. We didn't have anything for the internet until the internet.com bubble. We didn't have anything in blockchain until the blockchain crashed. We didn't have anything. This is all industries. And so this is what we need industry wide, is a cannabis bubble crash. We need all these motherfuckers to lose their ass in order to have real innovation happen across the board, and to be forced into thinking outside the box on how we operate. And everybody wants to complain, oh, this is because we're all paying the IRS and we can't, and 280E is the reason why we're constantly in the red. And I just think that it's still filled with a bunch of fucking idiots who decide to blitz their money in a bunch of unsuccessful ways. Let's fly out to MJ BizCon and have a $400,000 booth.
Don't get me started on trade shows.
Let's fucking, it's this type of mentality where you think that they watch industries that succeed after a bubble, and then they do what they did, but they do it without the bubble happening. And of course, it's going to cause a fucking crash. And so I love this. But again, cannabis stocks are up 30% yesterday with the news of the DEA reclassifying and rescheduling this stuff, or in attempts to. And all that is pure speculation. And to me, it's just another way to garner the public's investment into something that is inevitably going to fail. And these CEOs don't give a damn. They're not playing with their own money. They're playing with their investors' money, or they're playing with the money they've gotten from their IPO. And that is a really interesting thing to see. We've seen it in every industry. We saw it with oil and gas 7 years ago. We saw it with, like
this short.
Exactly. And the housing market. This is, and what happened? What happened after the housing crash? The housing market exploded. So this is it. This is the sequence of events, and I am just dying to watch these guys get washed out and to quit having stores be called the apple of weed. That's still
gonna happen.
It is the silliest.
There's a lot of lazy writers on there.
God, it is just so funny.
Well, it's interesting. We are clearly, I think, in sales, in investment dollars, and everything coming out of COVID clearly demonstrate that cannabis is facing its first adversarial times as an industry. It's had nothing but positive success and growth since its inception of 1996 in California. It's had nothing but that, right? And so since that time, it's been good. COVID was great. We're seeing sales, we're seeing things down. And so now we're seeing articles like this, where Planet 13 is struggling. So just real quick to finish up this article, they were down, by the way, 14 million in just their fourth quarter of last year. So just a few months ago was their biggest loss yet. So it doesn't feel well. But by the way, co-CEO Larry Scheffler, we love to make fun of great marketing phrases. By the way, they had a strong quarter, down 14 million. They own 9% of Nevada's cannabis market and have a top brand in each category of like that. To me, was written. Might as well rewritten by Chat GTP. Now, what happens, by the way?
What defines the top brand, and what defines is it?
It's bullshit. So it's total bullshit.
And you can say things like, we have 7% of the market. Yes, but you're also probably doing 45% of the market's marketing. And like I said, you go to Vegas and you see 350 taxis with Planet 13 advertisements on the top at $100 a day for it. You know, you start doing the fucking math and you're like, this shit is not sustainable. And meanwhile, you're going to rack in $400,000 while you're spending an exorbitant amount of money on nonsense. You know, $400,000 for your salary. Anybody can spend fucking $74 million. I think if I gave the marketing budget to my fucking 10-year-old son, he would easily be able to waste $14 million. Like, it doesn't take a real winner to fucking lose that amount of money. You just fucking throwing it at the wall.
Well, let me break down in their defense. So they had a couple of things here that evaluate or that add to that debt, right? So they're trying to move into the state of Florida. So they purchased a big property and competitor or whatever, a brand in Florida. So they're going to have a presence in there with this VitaCan area. So they talk about where they're at the end of 2023. Just think about these numbers, math man, in your head there. 151 million in total assets, right? About 12 million in cash, 44 million in liabilities. And so this I find to be interesting, this next sentence. Operating expenses were 79% of the company's revenue in the fourth quarter, and operating expenses account for 97% of revenue, meaning it's all just coming and going at the same time, right? You're just working and it's never really gaining a profit. And so they're still losing every day. It does say they have 16 million. They're being sued by a company owner, big MSO lawyers fighting over weed money. I care little and have no empathy for them. So they're fighting over another 16 million, which they could win back in court. So the two big boys, a couple of the big boys, let's just, before we get to the DEA, a couple of the big companies in cannabis, like two of the biggest, two of the flashiest, struggling a little bit. Do you think this type of thing will hit the company like a Cookies, which has really transitioned itself into a lifestyle brand more than a dispensary or a grower, cultivator of weed? And both these chains, by the way, market themselves heavily as dispensaries. And so that's a note, right? We don't see as many of cultivators and processors, though there's problems there too. Do you think a company like Cookies has an issue coming down the road being more of a lifestyle brand, or is this going to stay with kind of the dispensary angle?
Oh no, this is going to be nationwide. As much as you can call Cookies a lifestyle brand, and as much as you look at the revenue they sell on their t-shirts and their backpacks and all their novelty items that associate with the lifestyle brand, it's one silo. And trust me, when you are going after cannabis and going after cannabis territories, you are blowing way more money than you're making on your t-shirt business. And so, you know, like I think about all the great business owners that have grew companies to billion-dollar industries and sold them later on and had 700 stores nationwide. I think of like the Kinko's guy, you know, some of these, the biggest lessons to learn. Yeah, well, the Kinko's guy realized real early on, dude. I mean, he had a very cash positive business day one selling copies in the 70s, especially on school campuses where they would copy textbooks and so on, right, for students so that you didn't have to pay for a textbook. He realized really early on, as he pushed into, say, the other printing businesses with actual printing presses and all sorts of stuff, that he didn't fucking know anything about that business. And it cost him so much money to figure out how to repair these machines and do everything. It wasn't until he focused on what was actually profitable within his business was he able to expand to 480 stores, 1,000 stores nationwide. And this is where the cannabis companies fail, is this idea that they are consistently throwing money into businesses in which they don't necessarily understand, and two, are focusing on the least profitable area of business to then waste their money on. And I think that, again, this is the shit that causes a crash. I already talk about marketing bubbles. A lot of these guys spend a shit ton of money in acquiring viewership or eyes, and there's not a simple way to formulate and calculate exactly where that advertising dollar went and did it actually accumulate any resources or new customers or loyalty in any way. And, you know, like it's just, I find it maddening that these people do not double down on the things that actually work and instead are constantly trying to expand into these new places without really proving themselves in the old places. And so this industry needs a little bit of a wake-up call, and that goes for our smaller cultivators and smaller dispensaries, especially dispensaries. I'm pointing at you, Mr. I'm not going to pay my bills. We're living on a net 30. We're
living on a net 30. No one's paying for the dirty. You know what, Dustin? I'm sure that's an amazing point. I really appreciate your monologuing about the industry. But you know what, Dustin? No one cares because weed's gonna be legal, or at least that's what I hear on the streets. Dustin Kava, big news hitting there. I think this is what happens. You have great points. We know that the industry is in this big bubble, but this big, and it feels, as I'm doing this show and realizing what we're talking about leading into this very headline, it feels like there's a plan here, and this is something to distract you from the realization of the industry. It feels like a lifeline, but what it is a shiny object in the corner, and if everyone's going to run this way, and we're going to have the same problems, but we'll see, Dustin. The DEA has agreed to reclassify, and there's a lot to get to in this when we'll talk about it here, but it has agreed to reclassify cannabis to a Schedule 3. That's kind of exciting news.
You know what? Okay. There's parts
it's
of
not
me that
bad news. Let's put it really clear. Can I just get this? Hold on. I got to get this point out real quick because this is something, and we may get to this later. This news came out. We're going to read through this article, the DEA talking about moving to Schedule 3. Big news in the industry. It's going to have some caveats. There's going to be some arguments, and there's going to be some harumphing on both sides, and there may be some, settlements and negotiations. All that stuff's going to happen, folks. We know that. But one of the majority things that happened on the social interwebs, right? When people get fired up, when people hear breaking news, I got to put their thumbs on their phones and let their opinions be known. One of the most common themes, if you gravitate towards cannabis-centric LinkedIn, or if you follow cannabis social media, was everyone being like, thanks, but what about social equity? Thanks, but what about people in prison? Thanks, but what's going to happen with the state regulations? Thanks, but I mean, it's all this thanks, but there's a lot of big old buts, oh yeah, out there when this happens. And I just want to tell you folks, take the dub. Take the dub and enjoy. I know it's not perfect, and we know that there's going to be a bumpity bump in the road, but it's a W at the end of the day. So take it.
I have to say, I constantly am thinking back to a couple episodes with Tim Johnson. Tim Johnson has been in my mind the past couple months where I am that Uber. I'm not going to call me I'm not always a pessimist, but with cannabis industry, I tend to be,
I've got 120 episodes of listening to you talk about it.
And Tim really put a good point. I hate incremental updates when I think the change is such a simple thing. It shouldn't be this difficult to make a massive change. And he constantly has reiterated, dude, these incremental wins are what push for more incremental wins. And eventually, inevitably, we're going to get to where we want to. And so I think this is an incremental win that does make a big difference on some major things and does open the door to some really positive effect, industry wide. I love this idea that it's going to open up for more research. I love this idea that it could possibly open up more avenues for safe banking. Again, I think that a lot of this, I still am under the class of like, I just don't understand why they needed the fucking bank to begin with. When again, there are high technology services out there that could take away the bank immediately. And
that's just the way it is. It's just the way it goes, man. People do what they know, and people do what others have done before them. And that is how they either learn, or as we've talked about already today, they don't. So the DEA, let's read through some of this news. This is from apnews.com. The DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, is going to move to reclassify under Biden's guidance or suggestion, taking the cannabis. So we know the president is not going to fight this, reschedule it to Schedule 3. And so what we're saying here, and obviously this article points out there's still going to be some reviews made, by committees, and there's going to be people that talk about it. But I feel like because they're putting this out there, I'm pretty confident that they're confident that while there's going to be a few harumphers and there's going to be a few loud folks on news or Fox News or someplace, it's probably going to happen, right? It's probably going to happen. It's probably going to happen within the next 30 to 60 days in some of that area. And so it's going to allow a few things here. And so Schedule 3 drugs, by the way, let's clarify this in the article. They're still controlled substances, right? Tylenol with codeine is an example of a
That's what I
Schedule
was
3
going to
drug.
ask is what are the other Schedule 3 drugs? Ketamine, I know.
Yeah.
Steroids, I know.
Correct. Steroids, Tylenol, stuff that you still need typically a prescription for, but it does open up now that potentially, cannabis has always operated in the medical marijuana world as a recommendation, never a prescription because of its schedule. It is now able to be prescribed, technically. Will big hospital chains embrace it? Probably not. But that
This
opens
also
it up
opens up
to
stuff for our
insurance.
veterans and being able to exactly insurance. When I owned the head shop, I was at one point looking into finding ways for your homeowner's insurance policy to say cover your expensive pipe. You have a $50,000 pipe, your house burns down, getting stuff like that to be covered. I also believe that there's a legitimate use case for health insurance companies covering your devices that allow you to use or vape your cannabis. I think, things like this does open the door for that. And it also opens the door for more eyes to look over your books. So, there's something to be said again, about that, they're going to have to jump through more hoops now. They're going, as much as we say loosening restrictions, that doesn't mean less oversight. It just means a different type of oversight.
In fact, according to the DEA, and once again, there's a lot to come on this, the initial concept, because typically people who hand out Schedule 3 drugs are registered with the Drug Enforcement Agency. If I go buy some powerful Sudafed, I got to give my license, right, in the state of Ohio, just because I want to get my nostrils flowing again. So currently, the idea would be that in concept, it would mean every dispensary across the country, of which there are 15,000, would have to register with the DEA, would have a different set of reporting. And clearly the DEA is not equipped to handle the stoners in their accounting systems. Like, they are not prepared. I think, well, I don't know if it goes that full way and the DEA gets truly like in that part. There's definitely going to be some sort of other sub branch of the DEA, the weed EA. Oh, I love it. It's the weed EA. We gotta put me as the overlord of that. I didn't get the Ohio cannabis overlord. That went to that dude who used to work in the booze industry. But this one would be the way potentially. So it's going to mean a lot, right? There's going to be a lot of changes. It's going to be a lot of slow hurdles along the way. We don't really know what it means, but it's not terrible. It's just not terrible. It means headaches and frustrations, but it means progress in our industry. And it means there are some really ideas like the folks that can, it's going to affect a lot of different prison sentences, right? Now that things are no longer considered illegal, like there's a lot of positive that's going to come. It won't be fast. Nothing's ever fast, but it will happen,
Yeah, and I wonder exactly why with the timing, is like you said earlier, is this a lifeline to the industry because of 280E? And they understand that almost no one's making money across the board except for the government.
Man. I didn't think that when we started to hit record, but as we've talked through this show and we're getting to this information, I don't know if it's intended, but it is definitely an unintended lifeline or a lifeline for the potential industry. It feels like it.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I just think it opens the door for CEOs to blitz more money on luxury yachts and fucking watches.
We got to be CEOs, Dustin. That's all I know. That's what I've learned. Here's what I got. One takeaway. I want to be a CEO because I want a private jet, bro. So HuffPost, let's go to Huffington Post. I don't think we've ever featured the HuffPost on the Because Cannabis podcast. You're welcome for the clicks you're about to get. HuffPost.com. Cannabis industry fired up. That's about as punny as they would go with on this about the possible DEA reaction. Our buddy Jim Belushi, episode 100 of the Because Cannabis podcast, he is down with your boy BC and Dustin here. They got that right. He puts it up on social media. Keep up the right direction. Always got to put a butt in there. Even Jim Belushi, you butted me on this. I didn't see that coming. Now let's release the cannabis prisoners. It's a good cause. People in the world can't just take a W and say, great job. Put tomorrow talk about the prisoners. Take this. Here we go. Loop, bro. Blue Police.
Yeah,
And this guy got into the cannabis industry. The CEO of High Seltzer. I'm going to guess they sell a lot of Delta 8 THCA beverages, a cannabis beverage ban. Loves the progress being made, but said, I don't want to see any rescheduling or new federal. I don't know why Blue Police talks like this. New federal regulations that harm the existing. Oh, here we can tell it. Clearly, he sells THCA from the existing market. Why else? No one that's in the legit
yeah, they don't give
business
a fuck about hemp. That is like
the fact that Lou Police, the CEO of High Seltzer, cares about the existing market for hemp and cannabis products tells me one thing about Lou Police. He sells THCA infused beverages. So, so we have this happening. We got Milan Patel, CEO of Pat. We got a little more of a testing thing, right? Should trigger federal regulatory agencies. I think this will, if there's one positive, it probably will help regulate the sometimes suspect, at least a conspiracy style suspect testing industry in some states. The DEA gets involved. Like, you need to know, and this is one of the issues with cannabis, when you go get your prescription of Xanax or even your, your Augmentin antibiotic, if it's 50 milligrams, 5 pills, like, you know exactly the dosage you're getting and what's in that product, right? And you know the off brands versus the real brands. So testing's going to get legit, too legit to quit, maybe.
And it's probably about damn time with certain things. Clearly there's a need for regulation when it comes to testing. We have seen, testing facilities lie about tests. We've seen, augmented things where they test once and then don't test the product again for 6 months or 10 months as they, ship new product in. They keep the same label in the dispensaries for what is what and what is in it. There's a clear need for this. I cannot wait to hear I'm actually excited. You don't want to hear the uproar and you're saying take the win.
Here's the beauty. I'm like, what's this famous like quote from like Newsroom or something? I don't give a shit about the uproar. I want to monetize the uproar, Dustin Kava. That's what we're going to do. We're going to pay attention. Make sure you hit subscribe because we're going to have folks who are all uproarious about it and we're going to pretend to be uproarious and Dustin's probably going to be, and I'm not going to be. So it's going to be great. Don't worry. The uproar will be featured. What is that? The uproar will be televised. It will be featured live on YouTube every Wednesday, 420 and Spotify with video on Thursdays in there. Hold on. I want to point out one more thing. Milan Patel, the CEO of that testing company, we should give him credit, give him the name of his company, Pathogen DX, talks about, and this will be true. I think you're going to see more and more manufacturing processes, probably more big money in weed. Cannabis publicist Alice Moon, who, by the way, has rejected multiple appearances to be on the show. So I'm going to guilt her. Maybe she'll show up on the show at some point. I've invited her. She said no. But she got featured in the HuffPost. She's on HuffPost. HuffPost doesn't interview me. So I guess check mark W for Alice Moon in that area. She talks about being able to health. She is a cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome person. Maybe that's why she won't come on to discuss it in there. So she talks about that a lot. She's in there. I don't know. It's going to be interesting, right? There's a lot of, this guy's basically like, I think everyone's pumped up, but there's a lot of unknowns. That to me says it well. That says it well. I think.
When is there not? God damn it. You show me one fucking guy who absolutely can predict the future. Like, what the fuck? Like, when I look at a parent, I'm not like, this guy knows. I'm like, this guy has made up bullshit every single day he's been a parent. No one fucking knows how to be a parent. They just wake up and do what they do. Like, there is no fucking, God, it's so funny when I hear this. This is the reason why, I have to laugh. Oh, we are going to have to see because there's a lot of unknowns. Well, no shit, you idiot. Tell me what the weather's going to be like in 6 months from now. Like, fuck you. Fuck you. God, it is the silliest shit. I want to, you know what? Again, that's who I invest in, is the guy who goes, I don't fucking know what the future is, but we're going to figure it out. That's where I'm this guy gets it. Does he have a shitty Timex on? Okay, check number 2. I'm fucking in. I'm all in.
I really love those Timexes, right? What's it say? I don't know about that. It's going to be interesting to watch. I do mean that. Seriously, I do expect we'll have lots of folks on here who will be all mad about it. I can't wait to hear it. I can't wait. some of it, like the Ohio thing, which has been interesting to watch. We got one more news article we're going to hop on in just a second, talking about Ohio sales. We'll finish off the show with that. But I can't wait. As interesting as it's been to watch the Ohio market, especially the two of us being from Ohio and working in the industry and seeing how it's going, and it's about to hit a whole new avenue in just a second, as we'll highlight. It's going to be really, really fun to sit back and watch the people just go at it. The keyboards fly. The LinkedIn AI written posts about this subject are going to be like, if you have an AI bot, you want to download that new like Llama 3 and get it to start writing posts, go to LinkedIn, write a bunch of scripts that'll write tons of cannabis pro and con DEA posts. And sir, you will move up the LinkedIn charts so fast, right? Work both sides. That's the way to do it. That's how we play here in that. But it's going to be silly. It's going to be fun. In the end of the day, it's going to be good. It's going to be good for the industry. So whatever you think, it's a good step for industry and for human beings who use it as a medicine. Truly, it's a super win for them because it's going to be less decriminalized than it was before.
Well, again, we are not, we had Dr. Hamant Bid on a long time ago, which I really want to get back on the show. And he talked a lot about the lack of testing about drug-on-drug interactions with cannabis. And this opens the door to that testing. This opens the door to isolating those specific compounds and testing them against medications. And that opens the door to more recommendations and more prescriptions down the line. And that is not a bad thing for the industry. But again, I think we need to watch. These guys, the guys who just had a 30% increase on their stock price have already spent the money. They've already spent all the money. So they've already
that private jet lined up, putting a helicopter pad on top of the dispensary.
What happens when they say, oh, you need to refile all this paperwork in every dispensary you own and every company you own across the nation because of this rescheduling, and it's going to cost $40 million. We're now going to see cannabis company loses $4 million due to rescheduling Schedule 3.
Someone's going to blame the government. This is what's going to happen. Yeah. We're going to have they legalized weed and my weed business, my weed business went out of business because I couldn't be legit. We're going to have those pity articles that because we now legal federally, I can't operate anymore on a state level because of my suspect business operations.
Yep. And I love that. And that's exactly what we're going to hear. We're going to hear the pity me, in that regard. And let them. I'm dying to watch this play out over the next 16 months, 17 months, which is what it takes for bureaucracy to fucking do anything.
Well, speaking of bureaucracy, as we finished up the show today, one more article, Dustin, I wanted to hit. Speaking of bureaucracy, easy for me to say, we've mispronounced a ton of words today. Leave us a note in the comments. Let us know which ones we mispronounced, please, because I can get Dustin. I'll send him. I do send him a 2-minute report, basically, after every show. All the words that Dustin mispronounces. I don't critique myself. I critique my co-host. That's how I roll on here. It's brutal environment I put Dustin under. Ohio recreational sales, Dustin voted for on November 2nd, 2023, issue 2. We've had a ton of past shows. You can go check out Tim Johnson multiple times, ton of guests talking about that. Exciting. Everyone suspected that they put this June 7th date, which was when dual licensing operations were going to have applications ready by. Because of that, everyone has been targeting September 1st as the date of when sales kind of go live, when adult use happens. But it feels like, and I know almost for a fact, that it's going to happen probably by July 1st. So there's been a couple of news articles that have come out, but really what happened was Jamie Gallagher kind of went out and told the folks, hey, weed's going to come in June, whether you like it or not. And so he's kind of putting the pressure on the folks to make this happen. And so here's really, and there's a bunch of different articles. Kyle Yeager wrote this one on the marijuana moment. Put that in the list, marijuana moment on there. And so basically what's happening, Dustin, is that on June 7th, the dual licenses will be more than likely available for purchase, and the different and existing dispensaries and such can apply for them. And so what that means is on June 7th, technically, assuming you submit your paperwork immediately, let's say you're Johnny on the spot, you submit it that day. Let's say the DCC, the Division of Cannabis Control in Ohio, feels nice and they put that as a second click. Stop me from clicking. Tell me that every time I click, put it in the comments. I'm asking for a lot from you today. They put their stamp of approval on that. In theory, right? In theory, Dustin, you could have, if they stamp that dual license, you should then be allowed, once you pass these check marks, to sell legal cannabis, which means, in theory,
what a
there
check
could be
mark
someone.
list does. When you
Yeah,
complete the check mark list, you
there's a
move
lot of
on.
check mark lists. They're working on the check mark list right now. It's going to have a nice document. It's going to be a Google sheet. You fill it in. Beautiful. When you complete that, you should be able to sell. So there probably will be some folks who are selling on July 1st. But as we talked about a little bit in the last episode, there's going to be that, bell curve. And I think most folks will probably get it to September. Do you think the early adopters, the ones that sell right away, that hit the first sales, are going to be super successful, or do you think they're going to crash and burn because they're not ready for it?
This is not like opening up a fucking convenience store, or like we said before, a Kinko's. I mean, like, you need to have, for any newcomer, you need to have the property in place and purchased before you ever file your application. There is a shit ton of money to spend before you ever are actually selling this. And
well, these
so,
for a lot of the existing medical dispensaries, if they get this dual use, and
what
that's
does
the
that
first
mean?
one.
I mean, there's obviously going to be a boost in sales, but are they going to become the Ohio weed company because adult use is happened? I don't think that happens automatically and based on the fact that you hit the ground running first in the state anymore. I think that, again, it's a very territorial thing when it comes to your license, and the cities that allow however many licenses within their city boundaries. It's a place. It's a place, and it deals more with where your dispensary is located than anything else. And so, do I think that if the Southern Ohio stores somehow opened up 4 months later to sell this, that they're going to do even worse than the guys who hit the ground running day one? The answer is fucking no, because they're in Southern Ohio and they have their own sales base. They have their own territorial.
Yeah, they'll keep driving to Columbus.
That's right.
And then when Cincinnati opens, they're going to go right there to Cincinnati. And then when 2 open in Cincinnati, they're going to find out which one has the better deals on Tuesday. And that's where they're going to go on Tuesday. One has the better deals. And then when 4 open in Cincinnati, they're just going to go to whichever ones have the sales, and they're going to pick and choose. And then when a bunch open, say 10 or 12, then 3 or 4 are going to shut down because now there's too many to serve the city. Like, no, we've seen it, right? We've seen it.
No, this is exactly. This is exactly. It's a tale as old as time. It's going to happen that way, as it should. And as a market figures out itself, this is what that looks like. I don't know any market where every player in the game fucking succeeds. That's just not how a free market works. There needs to be people who lose, and there needs to be people who win. It's a fucking game. As long
as we're the winners.
Wow, and we are winners anyways.
We are winners anyway.
I love it. I mean, I sound pessimistic about it, but I am excited. I'm excited to see what it causes, and I'm also excited to hear the bitching. So I'm gonna have a great couple months regardless, and no one's gonna shit on my horse. Is that a thing? Shitting on a horse?
Hey, Dustin.
Yeah.
I asked my cannabis broker for stock tips, but he just rambled about reefer dividends.
I got one. So what's the deal with cannabis banking?
I don't know. What is the deal with cannabis banking?
I mean, is everyone going to rush to deposit their buds in joint accounts?
Oh, I tried to deposit my cannabis earnings at the bank. You know what they said?
What?
They don't accept high finance.
See, this is the type of shit that gets me going in the morning. I'm like, I'm going to be thinking about that all day. Like, that was a damn good dad joke, BC.
I don't even, okay, by the way, we totally had AI write these. I don't even get this one. What do you call a fake rental car that smells like marijuana?
What?
A buy field trip.
I don't understand that at all.
ABYE field trip. A buy field trip? I don't think that, why? Okay, this just feels insulting. Why couldn't the pothead change a light bulb?
Why?
He got too baked and spaced out. That's not even a joke. That's like a fact. That's like a factual statement. Why? Hold on a second. These are terrible. Why was the cannabis plant grounded?
Why?
Because it was too high. Doesn't make any sense.
Why don't DEA agents ever get lost?
I don't know.
Because they always follow the highway.
I hope you made it to the end of the show. I really hope right now you watch this. The cannabis dispensary owner is so rich. How rich is he, you ask? His cash literally has a dank scent. I don't even know what that means. What's a dank scent? I don't understand. I don't understand. What's your favorite weed dad joke? One more time. Leave it in the comments, right? What's your favorite weed joke? Those are terrible. We got to write our own. That's what we need. We need to bring back stoner comedies. That's what no one's ever thought of a stoner comedy before, right? Like two buddies getting together, smoking weed.
Oh yeah,
on a hilarious
clearly never been a Cheech and Chong.
No, this never happened. I think, you know, I feel like we're on to something, right? Me and you, we smoke a little weed, we get silly, we have wacky adventures, we make a movie out of it. I feel like it's an original concept, IP, trademark that sucker, stoner buddy comedy. Solid. I like it, Dustin. We're on to something here. You're on to something. If you discovered the show, thank you everyone for joining us today, listening to the Because Cannabis podcast every Wednesday, 4:20 p.m. on YouTube, Thursdays with video on Spotify. Dustin, great show today. It was interesting. It's going to be fun. It's cool news. It is exciting, breaking news. It's fun to be one of the first shows putting out a podcast. You're welcome talking about that. But it is cool. It is cool, and I'm excited to see what happens. And you got to find out what happens by hitting subscribe. Make sure you get notified of the latest and greatest shows. Follow socially at MeetWM. Dustin Cava, as always, fantastic to, a little early on the draw. I just had speaking of expert, I just had a premature overlay happen right there. A quick premature overlay. You hadn't even started the music yet on there. Let's finish this off strong, Dustin. Hit me that music in the background, everyone. Thank you for checking out the show every single week. We are not live, but we are pre-recorded on YouTube. I'm terrible.
We're something on
YouTube, 4:20 p.m. And on Thursdays on Spotify. Thank you all for checking us out. I hope you made it this far because this was an awesome ending to the show.
Check out your cannabis CEO's watch to see if you should still work.
What type of watch does your boss have? Leave it in the comments, everyone. We'll see you next week.